will say good day to you this day of your time. We will begin this transmission in the following way. First and foremost, we will thank each and every one of you, individually and all of you together collectively, for sharing in this transmission and the interactions that will take place later today of your time. Things in your reality have shifted. New parallel realities are constantly coming into existence along a new course of energy, a new direction of vibration and frequency. And in accordance with these shifts that have now taken place, the transmission will contain some different information. We will this day be discussing and sharing with you perspectives and information having to do with what we will call 9 levels of consciousness. The 9 levels of consciousness we will be dealing with will have to do with those levels that are immediately relevant to your physical reality experience, even though some of these levels may not in and of themselves be physical expressions of consciousness. They are intimately connected to your experience of physical reality, and your physical consciousness, your physical mind, can and does connect to and call upon information from these levels. And in connecting to and calling upon information from these levels does thus then determine exactly how your experience of physical reality will be created, will determine the quality of that experience of physical reality. Now, notice that generally speaking, we say your experience of physical reality rather than in physical reality, because physical reality is not actually something you are in. It is something that is in you. It is in your consciousness. It is an experience of your consciousness. And in this description of the 9 levels of consciousness we will be addressing in this transmission today, we will endeavor to clarify certain aspects of consciousness we have covered before, but which we have never delved into in this degree, in this way, so that you can have a much clearer understanding and a clearer ability, a stronger ability to deal with different levels of your own consciousness, to understand how those levels work with each other, and thus then to allow a more balanced experience of physical reality to occur within your consciousness. We will begin by giving names and labels and identifications to these different levels, some of which you have heard, some of which you may not have heard of. Nevertheless, you will see in time how they relate. Again, of course, remembering that these levels are simply arbitrary divisions created within an overall consciousness that you are, a greater being that you are. But the vibrational differentiations created within your consciousness give rise to these different experiences of levels, of dimensions of consciousness that all exist within your greater being. We will start at the level that is highest in frequency and yet still relevant to the idea of your physical experience, that level that is referred to as the Oversoul. Now, some individuals on your planet often refer to this by a variety of names, Oversoul being one of them. Some refer to this as celestial soul, and you can use that term if you wish, although it is also possible to assign the term celestial soul to something even higher than the Oversoul, and perhaps even more representative of the greater being we initially referred to. But for now, we will use the concept of Oversoul as that which can extend itself and express itself as many individualized souls, or spirits, if you wish. In this context, the term individual soul, which is the next level down in frequency under the Oversoul, and individual spirit being interchangeable terms, synonymous for the purpose of this transmission with one another. So, Oversoul can, in a sense, extend itself, or, if you wish, split itself into a multitude of individual souls or individual spirits, each of which can experience individually what we are also about to describe, should such an individual soul choose to experience the idea of physical reality. What we are about to describe is generally the path that is created, generally the overall blueprint that is created from that level down to crystallize within the consciousness the experience of physical reality. Once the Oversoul has split itself into a multitude of individual souls or spirits, thus then a spirit choosing to have a physical incarnation experience will thus then split itself even further, vibrationally speaking. The first layer it will split itself into will be the idea of the higher mind and the physical mind. Now, higher mind remains non-physical as a representation of the spirit vibration, but it is not the whole spirit. In that sense, it is still part and parcel of something that has split itself to create a physical reality experience. And just as the physical mind experiences a discrete and distinct physical world, physical realm, physical reality, so too the higher mind actually has its own world, its own realm. Now, in the physical world, you will notice that it is mostly defined by the idea of what you call three-dimensional space and one dimension of time. But in the higher mind's realm, in the higher mind's reality, a fuller experience of multidimensional time is capable of being experienced, whereas not necessarily so much space is required. You will find thus then that just as the physical mind can appear to navigate in 3 dimensions of space, the higher mind can navigate in multiple dimensions of time. And this is why, from the higher mind's perspective, it can experience what the physical mind calls past, present, and future all at once, and has the point of view that gives it the broad, big picture view that allows it to guide the physical mind on its journey through the idea of third-dimensional space. So there are 2 parallel worlds, in a sense. The world of the higher mind, in which certain kinds of experiences can be had, the world of the physical mind, in which certain other kinds of experiences can be had. And these are 2 discrete and distinct kinds of realities, far different than the combined reality of the individual soul or the spirit, which contains all of this, but operates on a higher frequency, even as the Oversoul also operates on a multidimensional higher frequency, allowing it to experience a multitude of individual souls simultaneously. Now, going down, as we said, vibrationally from the oversoul to the individual soul or spirit, to the higher mind and to the physical mind. In between the two, there is yet another vibratory plane. And this is what we have referred to as the template level reality that separates the non-physical higher mind world from the physical world. This template reality is kind of a hybrid of both. It is like unto a blueprint reality in which the higher mind can set up certain kinds of blueprints or templates of what the physical mind portion of its whole being may experience. And as we have said in past transmissions, when the higher mind and the physical mind can function in a balanced relationship, then that allows the whole being to express itself in a balanced way. The whole being that is experiencing physical reality. This is why it is important for the physical mind to work in conjunction and in relationship with higher mind so that it functions holistically, taking advantage of the view of the higher mind in its world and augmenting it with the perspective of the physical mind in its specific discrete realm. But the way to do this, the level of reality through which this connection is accomplished, this relationship is accomplished, is the template level reality, which is a world unto itself. And in this template level reality, where the blueprints of physical reality are laid out to be experienced, there is a conduit in this reality that connects higher mind and physical mind, and we have referred to this as the conduit you call imagination. This is where you allow yourself the freedom to let the perspective of the higher mind, the telepathic communications of the higher mind, free rein to filter through the template level reality into the receiver that has been created in physical reality, which is called the physical brain, that thus then allows the perceiver of the physical mind, which is composed, as we have said, of belief systems and emotions and thought patterns and behaviors, to function in the way that it needs to explore the concept called physical reality. But now, within the physical world, even though we have said it is composed of these belief systems and emotion systems and thought systems, there is something we would like to very specifically clarify about the way these are arranged in physical reality. Because we understand in that the way this concept has been transmitted and in the way that your language has been designed to interpret this concept of the threefold personality structure has led you to believe, in a sense, that it exists in a certain structure, and in fact, the structure it actually exists in is exactly upside down and opposite from the way humans tend to think. In other words, when we talk about the idea of this three-part physical mind composed of beliefs and emotions and thoughts, there are specific vibratory levels in which these things are manifested. The vibratory level in the physical mind in which belief systems are manifested is often referred to by your society as the unconscious mind. The level of the mind in which emotions are generated is often referred to as the subconscious mind. The level in which the thoughts are generally experienced is simply called the conscious mind. Now, herein lies a little bit of confusion and a need for some degree of clarification. Because from your physical perspective, you have been taught or trained to view the idea of your conscious mind and your thoughts as being, so to speak, on top, and the idea of your emotions being a level below that, and the idea of your belief systems being buried even further below that, because of this perspective, you actually have an erroneous image of how this is structured. In reality, belief systems in the unconscious mind are on the top level vibrationally. Emotions are on the center level, as they were, but thoughts are on the lowest level vibrationally. Look at it this way in terms of how the personality structure is created, because it comes down in vibration from the higher levels through the template reality, and the first level that's created, the level that's closest representationally to the higher mind, is the unconscious level, which contains the beliefs which come from the template level reality, because beliefs and definitions are blueprints that determine what the levels below that will experience. So you actually go from a belief level that is higher than an emotional level vibrationally, and you go from an emotional level that is higher than the level of thoughts vibrationally. Even though you tend to think that you dig down in your personality vibrationally to find your beliefs, in order to actually experience and identify your beliefs, you actually have to raise your vibration to go up into the unconscious level. That is the main difference, and therein lies some of the main confusion within some of the processes that exist on your planet for finding out what your definitions and beliefs are, because there is an automatic assumption in many people on your planet that you actually have to go deeper down into your consciousness to find your beliefs, when in fact you actually have to raise your frequency and go up to find them, because those beliefs are closer to the template level reality from which they were generated, and closer to the higher mind who generated the original blueprint. But there are levels below even this, below the thought level. There is an 8th level below that we will call the automatic mind on an individual level. And this is wherein you experience the idea of what you typically call patterns of behavior, habits of behavior. It is, in a sense, a kind of unconsciousness, a kind of unawareness, but it is not the same term we are using now when we define the idea of the unconscious level that contains beliefs, which is actually higher than this level, and higher than emotions, and higher than the thought level. This is a different kind of unconsciousness or unawareness, a different kind of limitation, segregation, or separation of consciousness that creates the idea of patterns you are unaware of, habits you are unaware of, until such time as you bring them into your conscious awareness. Quite often doing this by discovering what your beliefs are, and thus by raising your vibration to find out what those beliefs are, finding out what those patterns are that lock into and reinforce the idea of beliefs that may have generated those particular unaware, unconscious patterns below the level of conscious thought. And there is yet again a 9th level, even lower than that you typically refer to as the collective unconscious. This is where the collective agreements are made of things that are so automatic, so assumed to be a given, that you don't really think about them at all, such as certain common factors or attributes about what you call the experience of physical reality, such as gravity and time and space and up and down and left and right, and those kinds of things. All are in the lowest possible level of what you call the collective unconscious, where all of the collective agreements reside to a degree and in such a manner that you don't need to think about them at all, you just experience them. On the 8th level of individual automatic behavior, you still can experience your relationship to the collective unconscious, to the collective agreements. What is your personal relationship, in a sense, unconsciously to these things? What patterns have you agreed to within yourself individually that you're not necessarily paying attention to? But herein, in this level, are the things that can be translated into conscious awareness by the utilization of the top three levels of thoughts and feelings and beliefs. But you must work it from the belief level first, because that's highest to the level that those beliefs were created in, generated from. I know this sounds paradoxical, but this is actually the way it is structured. And beliefs are not deep, deep down. They are much higher than feelings and much higher than thoughts in terms of their vibrational frequency. So if thus then, in having created from the Oversoul, the individual soul or spirit that thus then chooses to have a physical experience and thus then further separates itself into higher mind in its own realm, creating the template level reality through which to translate its ideas, its concepts into physical blueprint material, and thus then generates the physical personality capable of perceiving or experiencing what the higher mind has generated in those blueprints, starting with the unconscious belief system level, going down through the emotional level, going down to the thought level, and down further into the automatic behavior level, and down further into anchoring itself to the physical experience by going down to the collective agreement level. You then have the 9 levels in total that are necessary for the creation of the experience of a physical reality in this context. Now, one more word about the idea of the confusion about the 3 levels of thought and feeling and belief. And whereas heretofore you thought that belief was on the lowest level, this is where also we will speak to the idea where some confusion exists now. With respect to the idea of these 3 levels, and in thinking that the belief system is the lowest level, to see how this particular point of view can actually cause some difficulty in understanding the patterns and behaviors that are in that lower unconscious level. Because when individuals on your planet label the idea that belief systems are actually vibrationally lower, that you must actually go down in consciousness to find your beliefs, what they're actually doing is heading down into the 8th and 9th levels instead of going up to where the belief systems actually are. By assuming that beliefs are down, you actually lower your frequency and get caught up in the idea of the unconscious patterns and habits and reinforce them instead of actually discovering what the beliefs are by raising your frequency. This is why many individuals on your planet actually have a great degree of difficulty in accessing the concept of their beliefs and defining their beliefs, is because they have this particular template overlaying their idea of what physical consciousness is, of what the personality structure is. And because they believe that they must dive deeper down, they actually take their vibration back down into the level of the pattern, the habit, behaviors on that deep unconscious level. In searching for their beliefs, they only, in a sense, reattach themselves to those patterned behaviors, those habitual behaviors, wondering why they keep getting caught up in that again and again and again and again. A lot of it has to do with this upside down definition that humans on your planet have of exactly where belief systems reside within the personality structure. So, to allow more clarity, to allow yourself to finally bring those behavioral patterns in the deep 8th level individual unconscious mind to come to the level of consciousness so they can be dealt with, you must actually raise your frequency, go up to the level of the belief systems, then make your rearrangements there and allow the new beliefs that are put into place to then filter down through the personality levels again with a new frequency, realigning everything as it filters back down and recreates and recrystallizes and restructures the personality so as to then make the new personality that has now been realigned capable, transparent enough of a receiver to allow for recognition of those patterns, to be able to understand how to let those patterns and habits bubble up into the personality structure in order to be dealt with by the thoughts, by the emotions, by the belief systems that have now been rearranged to allow for greater insight and greater clarity, greater receptivity, greater discernment, greater ability to perceive those particular habits and pattern belief system thoughts that exist way down in that 8th level and even further down in the 9th with respect to your individual agreements as they relate to the collective agreements of your entire society. A diagram either has been or will be provided so that you can follow along these ideas clearly and allow for easy remembering of how this is actually structured. So fear not, you will be able to see, as you say, in black and white before your eyes, a very simple diagram that will allow you great clarity in understanding how these levels are arranged within your total consciousness, within the 9 levels we have just described. And thus then, following along what we have just explained, in clarifying how these levels actually relate to one another and what position they actually occupy within your consciousness, you can now allow yourself greater opportunity to understand how your consciousness works, and you can, through various forms of meditation or various forms of action, allow yourself greater experience in seeing how this new understanding can allow you to arrange the personality structure in such a fashion as to experience physical reality in a much more synchronistic way, in a much more aligned way, when you allow yourself to let the vibrational levels remain in their proper relationship and don't create belief systems or definitions that take them out of their proper relationship with each other, which has been to some degree part of what many of you experience as difficulty in getting a handle on many of the concepts we have shared with you, many of the tools that we have shared with you through a variety of transmissions. Many of you may ask, well, Bashar, why not deliver this template first so that then the subsequent tools that you delivered would be more understandable, more capable of being used in conjunction with a clearer understanding of how the idea of consciousness is arranged? That's a very good question, and we will answer it. Thank you very much. There is always a timing to the way we transmit the idea of tools to your society. And even though this tool, now that we are speaking of, the 9 levels of consciousness, could have provided a greater level of clarity in using the tools we delivered through all of the time we have been communicating with you, the irony and the paradox is you didn't have enough tools in order to understand what we have now just delivered. Even though this seems very simplistic as a tool and very simplistic as a structure, at least from our point of view, you actually had to have tools. You had to be given certain tools first in order to be allowed time to practice with those tools, so that by the time it came time to deliver this tool, you would actually have the ability to comprehend how this tool can be applied to what we have already delivered in information. That's the paradox about how this is structured. But now that we are delivering this tool, it is timing, by definition, for you to understand how your consciousness is layered, how the frequencies exist and relate to one another in your collective consciousness, in your individual consciousness, in your higher consciousness, on all levels of the 9 levels we have now just described. This is one of the major keys now, and you can insert this key into all we have said and use this new key to truly clarify how you go about figuring out what is going on within your consciousness and how to apply this tool to find out and identify what beliefs are necessary to realign and transform in order for you to create more crystal clarity in the personality complex that thus then is more capable of being a better receiver, a more transparent receiver for the things that are going on in your individual pattern and habit behavior level and your collective agreement level. This now is one of the final keystones of information required by your society to accelerate itself now toward what you call the collective consciousness acceleration in your year of 2012. And we will be dealing with many facets of this particular 9 levels of consciousness now as we have delivered them to you in a variety of ways to make sure that this idea, this concept, coming from your higher mind through the template level reality and into your physical mind takes root in the way that it needs to take root so that you can know you have the keys and the tools you need and a complete set of these ideas while you accelerate into your experience of the collective consciousness crossing of the threshold that you call your year of 2012. We will also provide now in this transmission and in future transmissions different kinds of meditations, different kinds of dialogues that will augment and enhance your understanding and ability to use this particular key, this particular template, this particular framework, so that you can make sure that you have the greatest opportunity, the greatest amount of choice, the greatest amount of ability to shift in the directions that you prefer to. Because again, remember, you're shifting all the time, billions of times a second. And so this is all about getting a greater awareness of the fact that you are shifting and a greater ability to design and define the parallel realities that you shift to. The 9 levels of consciousness will be of paramount importance in your understanding, in your ability to view this arrangement of consciousness, in making this picture, in making this visual sink in to your personality structure. You will thus then be implementing a rewiring of your neurological framework in a very specific manner. And this rewiring can cause a much greater degree of accelerated synchronicity in your life. Many of you have already begun to experience the leading edge of this communication before we even gave it in verbal terms. You are beginning to see much more astonishing and astounding synchronicities popping up in your day-to-day reality. This is the leading edge that many of you who are sensitive enough to experience it are beginning to already pick up on and incorporate into your physical personality structure and thus then your physical experience. But it will increase, it will magnify, it will amplify, it will expand even further as you now have a conscious recognition of this particular format, of this particular diagram of the 9 levels of consciousness, and incorporate that into your actual visual centers in the brain. It will now seep in a very different way and start rewiring the neurological net in your entire body, in your atomic structure, in a very specific way as to enhance and also simultaneously buffer the experience of your transition into new parallel realities that are far more representative of the reality vibrations that you say you prefer. Nevertheless, even with all of this going on within you, first and foremost, you must always remember you have chosen to have what you call a physical experience, and thus then it requires more than just sitting still and contemplating the ideas we are sharing with you today. It will always, first and foremost, and of paramount importance, be required that you act in physical reality in conjunction with these things we are delivering to you in this way. That you take action in the direction of your highest joy, because that will be the vibration that will allow you to experience higher communication with the higher mind through the template reality, and allow for greater accessibility of the belief systems that are closest to the template level, and greater understanding of the emotional systems that are secondary, and greater understanding still of the thought patterns that go on in the conscious mind, and greater understanding still of the unconscious patterns that go on in the deep level number 8, and the collective agreement ideas that go on automatically within your collective agreements that you have established and anchored yourself to in order to have a physical reality experience to begin with. Allow this to sink in now, and even as you contemplate the diagrams you have been given, allow yourselves to truly understand the necessity and the importance of always raising your vibration to discover and identify your beliefs, not lowering it. When you dive, quote unquote, down into your belief system level, you are actually flying up. You are rising up, rising higher, forming a stronger bond, in a sense, with the higher mind through the template level reality. Allow yourself to feel that rising sensation anytime you contemplate the idea of getting in touch with a belief system. Do not any longer think that you are going down deeper into your consciousness, but that you're actually rising higher above the levels of thought, above the levels of feeling, to the level of belief that is blueprint, that is understanding, that is template, that is closest to the higher mind, which is the big picture, the high point of view standing on the mountaintop that can see far and wide and deeply into time, past, present, future, all one from the higher mind's point of view, and moves freely through the concept of time, even as the physical mind moves freely through the concept of space. For in the higher mind realm, as it moves through the concept of time, it requires very little space, and everything happens in the same space. And the higher mind senses this and experiences everything happening here. Even though the physical mind experiences space as everything happening there, but experiences everything as now, as one time, in that sense, and has these concepts of past and future, which are never directly experienced. From the higher mind point of view, what you call the idea of the past and future are directly experienced as greater portions of the now, and thus by having the multidimensional experience of time, knows that all of that is taking place right here in very little space. So these are the complementary aspects of the spirit as it fragments itself into higher mind, template level reality, and the physical mind with its own fragmentations of unconscious, subconscious, and conscious mind that are anchored into the automatic consciousness of individual patterns and the collective consciousness of collective agreements that you will abide by in order to have a physical reality experience at all. So let this sink in. Let yourselves ponder this. And as you do so, let yourselves now take a deep breath and begin to relax, even as you look at, even as you visualize the diagram that has been provided of the 9 levels. Let yourself blur your vision a little bit so it is not quite so sharply in focus. Allow yourselves to simply understand for the first time that your belief systems are up in vibration and not down. And allow yourself the freedom to rise to that level anytime you desire to identify, to know, to understand a belief, so that you are not sinking down, 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 back again into the unconscious level of patterns and habits, but rising up, up, up to the freeing level of knowing your beliefs, of identifying your beliefs in a conscious fashion. Allow yourself to breathe deeply and easily and find that centered place of balanced peace as you let the visualization of this diagram sink into your receiver that you call the brain, and allow the corpus callosum that divides the brain, and allow the pineal gland that infuses the brain with multidimensional essences to comprehend and grasp these ideas to the degree where the vibrations that they give off will allow for the rewiring of the neurological net in such a fashion as to allow this to become your first nature of understanding, so that anytime you even begin to contemplate exploring the realms of your belief, you will find yourself and your vibrational frequency automatically rising to the task rather than lowering to some dark dimension of the unknown. Always, 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 the answers to anything you seek are up, not down in vibration. Down will only create more forgetfulness, more automatic consciousness, more repetition of things you say you don't prefer, more ensconcement into the idea of habit and pattern in an unconscious way. That is what the down vibration does, for it was through the down vibration that you created the crystallization and the limitations and the experience you call physical reality. It was through the down vibration that you created the experience of forgetting that you are a total being. So anytime you allow your vibration to go down, you will only be creating more separation, more segregation, more forgetfulness, more inability to know what it is you need to know. Anytime you really want to know, anytime you really desire an answer, you must always go up in frequency, because that's the only place you are capable of comprehending and even perceiving the idea of the information that will address the questions you've created in the forgetful spaces. Always go up. Look up. Look to the light. That's why the sun on your world is up, not down. Look up to the light. All the answers reside in the light of your total being, and if you allow yourself to understand how to implement this 9 levels of consciousness within you in a conscious fashion, then you will be at the true balance point in your relationship between physical and higher mind. You will then allow yourself to function in a physical way as the total spirit. That is the combination of the two. And you will have greater access to the individual soul level and the oversoul level and levels of source of all that is above and beyond all that. Go up. Rise to the occasion. For you are the occasion of your reality. We will allow you now a little bit of time to absorb this diagram, breathing deeply, breathing easily, at a place of peace and relaxation. Let yourself become rewired. Just allow it to occur. Do not fear. Do not go down in frequency with this experience. Go up. Know that your higher mind knows what it's doing. Know that the template level reality is perfectly formatted for the blueprint that will serve your physical mind best. And know now, if only for the first time, know now that your beliefs are closest to the higher mind and that your thoughts are farthest away. And that is why beliefs generate feelings, which generate thoughts, is because it comes from the top down, never from the bottom up. Ponder this, and we will resume this transmission in what you call a live fashion, so that we may discuss and explore together these concepts in any statements, questions, or desires you have to discuss this information. Take a short break.